All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Brad White, who is the COO at VARC Solutions. Brad, how you doing?
Doing fantastic, Timothy. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. And we like to jump right in. So if you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Well, what I like to do for fun is what a lot of people would consider painful. So I do I do a lot of working out. I do a lot of cycling, running, not as much swimming, but basically I like to do triathlons a lot. So that has me pretty active.
I gotcha. I gotcha. When did you start doing triathlons?
I started out probably back in 2015, 2016. I had been cycling for a little bit, and then a friend of mine was like, "Hey, if you just started running, you're almost doing triathlons." And I was I, not the biggest fan of running. So it's actually pretty challenging for me in general, but I've kind of gotten into it, gotten used to it, and then eventually added swimming. So one of those things I kind of just fell into it, but it's something that I like to do.
Yeah, man, I feel you. I'm actually doing a marathon here, the Austin Marathon in February, and I'm
No
not a runner.
kidding.
I like lifting weights. That's all I like doing. But some guy challenged me to run a marathon, and I don't really back down from a challenge if it's reasonable. Like if somebody challenged me to like go peak Mount Everest, I'm not really gonna take 6 months off of my life to go peak Mount Everest. But running a marathon, I figured it was gonna be it was easy enough. And so now I'm committed to a marathon, but I hate running. I
Oh my
hate
God,
it.
you could have just said no.
I could have. Next time, I think I will. I think I'm coming around to the like life isn't a testosterone battle, and so it's okay to just say no to stuff. Um, but anyway,
Running, running's a bit challenging. In fact, it's interesting. I my wife was a runner before I ever got into running, and she had already run like two half marathons before I ever ran even a
mhm.
5K. And so, um, but just like a lot of people who get into running, you try too much too fast, and then you get injured, and then it's off and on recovery for years. And so I've been through that as well, and but thankfully I've been able to push through it. But hey, the longest I've ever run is 13.1 miles.
Yeah.
As soon as I cross that finish line, I'm like, all right, I'm done. It's good. It's good.
I'm also not going to
But
be super intense on the marathon. Like in my head, growing up, I thought when you ran a marathon, you had to run it fast and you could not walk.
right.
And that is not the case. I'm going to be hitting the 10 to 12 minute pace and I'll walk intermittently and I'll be okay. So,
It's it's crazy, man. I'm signed up for a marathon myself. I've never run one officially, so I'm planning on doing. There's one in Fort Worth and also one in Dallas at the end of the year, like November, December, and so I've signed up for that. But yeah, it's like you're out there running and you're like, I don't know if it's just ego or what, but it's like you can't stop. It
yep.
can't. It's not official if you stop. No, no. The whole run walk method has gotten a lot of people across the finish line. So you got to do what you got to do.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Well, cool. Tell us a bit more about VARC Solutions. What do you guys do and what do you do there?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so from a business perspective, we're officially what is called a QuickBooks solution provider. So we do all things QuickBooks. And for a lot of our clients, that's basically just bookkeeping, right? We do bookkeeping for small, medium-sized clients around the country that just need help cleaning up, catching up, reconciling, just kind of like routine stuff. We also are a little bit unique, I think, in the space in that we also build solutions on a platform called QuickBase. Everything we do is kind of somewhat revolves around Intuit and QuickBooks, and so QuickBase was a product that was created by Intuit a long time ago. Now it's kind of a separate company, but think of uh, think of Microsoft Access in the cloud or Salesforce.com as a platform. QuickBase is a kind of like a similar platform that you can really build any kind of custom solution on, business process solution on, and so we develop solutions on that QuickBase platform, and then really just help integration, right? So we integrate QuickBase and QuickBooks with different things whether it's a, a sales tax solution, an inventory solution, what have you. And so that's kind of what we do as a business. And then my specific role is, our owner is a lady named Robin Hall, and she's a QuickBooks guru. She's been around in the business for a long time, and I basically was brought on to help basically build the business, grow the business, help with systematizing, operationalizing, working with the staff, hiring, firing, doing all the all the hard people stuff,
Yep,
and but ultimately really just helping grow the business.
I gotcha. I'm curious. Do you guys ever do bookkeeping for companies that are about to either sell or prepare to sell? Because I heard that bookkeeping, like
Mhm.
based on how clean your books are, you could get more or less for your company.
For sure. And in fact, I can kind of give you two data points on that. Um, One is, yes, we do a lot of cleanup work. So people that have tried to do books on their own, they've had their mother-in-law doing the books, they've had their brothers, sisters, cousins, boyfriend doing the books. Um, and a lot of times, these people aren't really, formally trained bookkeepers or accountants. And so either the books get kind of messed up, because they're not doing it right, or they just stop doing it right, and now you're looking at this thing 6 months later, 12 months later, and the bank account hasn't been reconciled. Um,
Yeah.
and so a lot of companies do actually come to us, one, to help clean up and catch things up, mostly for the benefit of continuing operations. But we have had a lot of companies that are in that scenario where, yeah, they're in chats with investors, or they know that they're about to be, and they're like, this is not going to work. We need to get this thing a little bit more up to snuff. So we do a lot of that kind of work. But I'll flip that around actually and just talk about it in reverse. We've actually talked with a number of other companies that we've looked to acquire, because that's one way you grow a business, is by acquiring other bookkeeping firms. And to your point, some of the ones that we haven't acquired, partly because they couldn't prove consistency in their P&L. They couldn't prove that they actually had recurring revenue. They couldn't prove that they had a growing business, and because their financials just weren't in, a shape to demonstrate that. So yeah,
Mm,
both sides.
yeah. So do you have a lot of experience with heading up the mergers and acquisition side of the firm, or is that somebody else's purview?
It's been primarily me, but I don't want to take all the credit. I mean, it really has been pretty much a team effort. So for example, Robin and I, it's part of what we chat about, when we talk about how to grow the business. But when we have opportunities like that come up to in front of us, I'm usually doing a lot more of the initial conversations. Hey, what could this look like? What are you trying to get for this business? Just having some of those conversations. But once it gets down to the point where it's like, okay, we're serious about this. Robin's the owner, right? So it's her money that is going toward this. So she's very involved. And our staff would 100% say that they're involved too, because once you get into that process where you said, okay, we are moving forward with this acquisition, now it's like, okay, great, what are we going to do with all these clients?
Yeah.
Who's going to do the work?
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of work that goes into, you know um, having conversations with potential clients. Is there price parity? You know is the services that we can offer the same as what they were getting? I mean, there's so much work that goes into it. It's pretty complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you guys buying books of business, or are you also buying the employees and the infrastructure?
Mostly it's been buying the clients, basically buying the book of business. And really, I think it's partly just that's how it's turned out. It's kind of like the couple that we've done, we've primarily, got the clients because the owner that had the clients initially, they were either moving into a different career, maybe where they were looking to be a full-time employee of another company, or they were continuing to run their business, but they were just trying to focus on a certain subset of their clients, not all their clients. So they were basically offloading some that maybe weren't quite as much of a fit in terms of where they wanted to move in the future. So in that case, it was more client focused. We've had a couple of conversations with other firms that were open to like, hey, I don't want to just sell my clients. I actually want to bring my clients with me. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked. But we've been, that's one, we're open to that. But the second part, it's kind of interesting is that, you start talking with a business owner that's, whether they've been in business for, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and now they're potentially becoming an employee. It's like, well, when I hire employees, I mean, we interview them, we vet them, right? We talk about what's your skills, what are your, what skills do you have, and we give them tests to see if they're good at stuff. And that's a little harder to do with an owner, you
Yeah.
know. It's like, hey, go through our, do our behavioral profile and, take this test to see if you really know QuickBooks, as an example. So, yeah, it hasn't worked out, but it's definitely an option for folks.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There we go. I was gonna ask something else. Oh, it's about lead generation. Are you guys cold calling these business owners, sending out direct mail, ads, affiliates, networking, referrals? How are you getting your leads?
For like the M&A stuff
Uh,
or
actually,
general.
both. I want to hear both M&A stuff and in general as well.
So probably more relevant for general audience is probably the general marketing kind of stuff. But I'll start with the M&A side. But so like, for example, in the industry, we're pretty well known. We go to all the QuickBooks conferences where there's thousands of people there, and there's accounting professionals, and there's CPAs and tax preparers and bookkeepers. And so just the fact that we've been in the industry as long as we have, we have a lot of conversations with people, and you're sitting there at a bar, or you're sitting there, having coffee at one of these conferences, and somebody starts saying, "Yeah, I'm so tired of this. I'm looking to retire, or whatever." And that's usually when those kind of conversations just sort of happen organically. It's like, well, did you know that we're open to chatting about that kind of stuff? And it's like, oh, really? I had no idea. And then, now
Yep.
we're down the path. So that's generally how it's worked for us. It hasn't been one of those types of things where we're out marketing the fact that we do this or would like to do this. It has just been kind of having those organic conversations. On the lead gen stuff, that's a hard one because we're a quote unquote small medium sized company, and every small and medium sized company out there has the same problem. It's how do you get leads?
Yep.
How do you get people calling you? How do you get people to respond to your phone calls and emails and things like that? I will say, as a business, we don't do cold calling. We don't do we don't buy lists and just call people at random and say, hey, by the way, would you like to have a bookkeeper, right? We don't do that, but we do a lot of marketing. Okay, we do a lot of marketing. So we're on the primary channels, I guess, historically, right? LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, things like that. But we're consistently beating the drum of, hey, these are the types of things that we do for clients. And so thankfully, and again, we've been in business for 24 years, so we do have a pretty good organic type of connection, if you will, out there for people that are searching for QuickBooks, bookkeeping, QuickBooks solution
Yep.
provider, what have you. So thankfully, people call us, people email us, so we've got more coming in than based on just our just the ongoing business that we've got in the marketing that we have, client referrals, things like that. So we haven't really had to go out and officially, I don't know what you call it. We haven't done like Google AdWords or anything where we're paying to get traffic.
Oh, so LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, those are all kind of organic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just posting on there. And it's not like we've got a million followers on any of those
Yeah.
platforms. But we're consistently, posting on there to say, hey, here's an article on, sales tax. Here's an article on, payroll, HR compliance, because we've got payroll solutions and we've got inventory solutions, and so we're just continuing to try to educate the world, through our channels, and hopefully people are seeing that and going, hey, I'll call the experts.
Yeah. Yep. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Man. Yeah, it's amazing to me how elusive marketing is. Because it's like, and so many businesses just do it so differently and just work on that kind of relationship basis at scale, which is
Yeah.
interesting when you're kind of on the outside of a business or you're an employee and you're kind of on the ground level. You don't realize how important that kind of reputation and relationship is to businesses, but it's the foundation of those small, medium businesses for sure.
Well, and I'll tell you just a few of the things, kind of riffing off kind of what you just said. So we just had an in-person conference this last week. It was a 2-day conference that we hosted in our hometown in South Houston, and we invited some of our partners in. And so we've got, I don't know, right now we've got like 215 partners that are under our umbrella as Intuit resellers. And so they're small, medium-sized companies. They're fellow bookkeeping companies. They're fellow, CPA firm, tax firms, things like that. And during this conference, one of the things we chatted about was marketing, right? And so, for example, we went out and looked at the attendees' websites, and we said, hey, are you communicating that you can do these 5 different things, right? Or when was the last time you posted a blog on your blog? When was the last time you posted on your social channels? And what's surprisingly simple in terms of what we discovered is that, number one, the big takeaway for me at least, people aren't going to call you if they don't know what you do.
Yep.
If you say, hey, I can do X, but you also can do these 3 other things, but you don't actually say that on your website anywhere, you don't say that on your marketing materials anywhere, people are not going to just randomly say, oh, by the way, can you also do X? No, they're not. They're going to look for people who do what they're looking for. So, as simple as it might sound, step one is kind of like listing somewhere prominently on your website, here are the things that we do. And so that's like number one, kind of no brainer. And then the second thing was that, if you're going to be on social media, you need to be posting on it. If you're going to create a blog, you need to be keeping it active. So many of these small businesses that we've chatted with, they've got, somebody said, hey, you should go do a blog. And they're like, oh, that's great. And they created it. And here it is 5 years later, and they have that, blog from 2000, my first blog post 2016, my next blog post 2019, and there's been nothing since. Okay.
Yeah.
Trust me, that is not helpful at all, right? So we discovered a lot of kind of nuggets like that. But the other thing, and then I'll shut up, is a lot of small business owners. I mean, they're whether they've got, whether it's a sole proprietor, I'm just doing everything myself, or if I've got a team of 3 or 4 or 5 people, most of them just have no idea how to do it. They don't know what to do. They don't, I mean, hey, I hired somebody to create my website, but it's not an ongoing, development thing. So if I need to go update a logo or add a new service page or a landing page, they just don't have any clue, like how to do that, when to do that, where to do that, why they should do that. And so, they're too busy, quote unquote, running their business to think about the marketing and how that's being communicated. So I think there's a huge opportunity out there for some company, right, just to go, hey, we can help you do the basics. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there we go. Well, tell us a bit more about your motivation. What really gets you up and keeps you going every day? And then tell us a bit about the motivation behind VARC Solutions.
interesting question. Yeah. My motivation, honestly, I've kind of reflected on this at different times in my career, is really just to make sure that I'm continuing to be of value to other people. Um, so because, like, I mean, I've worked with a lot of people in my career that are not happy, right? They're in a job they feel like is not going anywhere, and things like that. And I think in almost all those cases, it comes down to Number one, not continuing to learn, okay, not continuing to grow. But secondly, you get in a position where you're just kind of doing the same thing day in and day out, and at some point you just lose that. I don't know, you lose that idea of actually helping, of actually creating value through what you're doing. And so for me, what's kept me motivated is I think in every position I've had, I've really attempted at the core to make myself obsolete.
Mm.
Okay. In other words, I've tried to have a team, that I'm working with, that I'm empowering, that I'm training, I'm educating, I'm passing on responsibilities, I'm transferring ownership, so that not that I can just sit around and watch everybody work and go, isn't this great, having a team doing all the work, but by doing those things, it allows me to contribute actually at a much higher level in more important areas.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that makes sense, but at the end of the day, it's like I want to continue adding value beyond what I did yesterday, and really growing a team to keep growing as well. So
There we go. I love it. Let's go ahead and jump into dreams and goals. What's your vision for your life? And I don't know if you cast the vision for the company, but for the company.
I'm part of it. It's like Robin and I work together, pretty closely on where we're trying to go. And interestingly enough, I'll definitely get on the personal stuff here in a second, but my role is one in that I'm here to support Robin, right? I'm here to help her get where she's going, and that's how I can add value beyond what she's already doing. And ultimately, kind of like full circle to the beginning of the conversation, at some point she wants to be able to retire.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point, she wants to be able to eventually, sell the company and, and really recoup a lot of a pretty good return on a business that she's, given blood, sweat, and tears for the last 25 years and plus. And so that is part of the vision, right? Is getting that business to the point where it's not relying completely on her. We've got a staff that's empowered to do stuff. And if we had, a company that called us up one day and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about acquiring your business. I think one of the first questions that they would ask, and I would ask the same thing, is does Robin need to be here for the next 5 years to make that happen? Or can she literally do the handoff and now the company keeps running without her? And so that at the underlying, core level is part of what we're trying to do together. So that's from a business standpoint, that is the vision. From a personal standpoint, honestly, I've got I've got kind of like a general goal, so to speak, and then I've got some specifics, right? So generally speaking, my vision is really to stay healthy, stay active, stay strong, both mentally and physically, because I'm in the, let's just say I'm in the mid-50s, and when you start getting into that age bracket, we all have parents who are in some ways struggling, right? I've got in-laws, and I've got people that a lot of the folks that work in our company that have aging parents, and they're struggling with health for a variety of factors, right? One is there's dementia, there's just physical weakness, and
Yeah.
I mean, at some point it's going to happen to all of us, but putting that off for as long as possible is a pretty good thing, in my opinion. My dad is scared to death about getting old. I mean, he's like, he's seen it, right, with his parents. He's seen that with aunts and uncles, where dementia sets in. Alzheimer's is tough to go through, and he doesn't want to be that person that's in that position with other people having to go through that as well. So that's just kind of a general thing for me. I mean, I'm not scared of that. I know it's going to happen eventually. We all get 90 at some point. We all get 100 at some point, right? Hopefully.
Not me.
And so it's going to happen. but in the meantime, I would like to stay, physically fit and mentally healthy and flexible and feel like, I'm stronger at 70 than I am at 60.
Yeah.
I know that's an ideal and it may not happen, but that's part of the goal. Um, but here's another one just to kind of think of. And I think it's a pretty big problem in our society too, is just keeping a healthy balance between work and family and relationships and just life in general. I've been in those roles within a company where it's workaholic, it's I'm working 50, 60, 70 hours. I've talked with, business owners that, are working 70, 80 hours a week and their relationships and their family and their kids are suffering. Um, and that seems backwards to me. It's like the whole thing about living to work versus working to live. And um, I think it's really important to maintain a really healthy balance. Do your work, do a good job and work when you're working, but at the same time, make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. If I didn't have my wife and I didn't have my kids, what's it all for? I mean, am
Yeah.
I just, putting money into a bank account so that I can, spend it? I mean, there's not a lot of meaning behind that. So, um, I think it's really important to stop and smell the roses and really make sure that you're, big spending time on the relationships, and you can't do that if you're always working. So, um, anyways, I've got some specific ones, but I'll just pause for a second. I mean, what do you think? What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I love it, man. I'm kind of in that phase of I'm grinding real hard right now, newly married. So obviously I had a podcast this morning, went to work, two podcasts right after work. I'll be done around 7:30, right? And the first podcast was at 7. And so, I'm probably pushing that 55, 60, 65 hour weeks, but I'm like, the second I have a kid, it's done. Like, I don't, whatever progress I've made, because I'm pushing hard right now because I want to be at a certain financial point, whatever it may be, when I start having kids. So life's a little bit less stressful. But I'm like, I am not going to compromise time with my kid to work. Like, I'm really trying to fight for that. And I'm working so hard so that I have the
Mm.
financial freedom and stability and time with my kid later, as opposed to just time with my kid and maybe being stressed about finances like my parents were their whole life. And so I agree with you completely with the healthy balance.
Well, I'm gonna give you a little encouragement too. And I know sometimes I'm sure this goes the other direction, but I'd give you some encouragement too in that, I think it's really important to create something now that's sustainable. Okay.
Yep.
So in other words, like whatever you want to be doing in 3 years, start doing that now and make that sustainable. Because if you get into that pattern where you are just it's all about work and driving and driving and driving, hey, there's a time and place for that. Everybody has seasons in their career where that's maybe more important than others. But at the same time, it's also hard to turn it off,
Yeah.
you know? And so when I was younger, so I've been married for coming up on 27 years, and I've got twin daughters that are 20 years old. They're in college. I've got a son that's 18 in high school, and it didn't that suggestion about having a healthy work-life balance and that suggestion of making relationships very important to, at least in my world, it's very important now. um, I didn't I didn't start my career with that mindset. I was actually quite the opposite. I was a workaholic when I started out. I mean, I was working a lot, and I was in a position too where I was traveling like 3 weeks out of every month, and that was fine when I was single.
Yeah.
To your point, right? I was fine when I was single, but when I got married, now my wife wants me home a little bit, right? But it really hit me when my daughters were, they're twin daughters, but it really hit me when they were like 4 years old. And I remember, so they start coming out with their relationships, or verbally they can communicate a little bit more. And I just remember, being on the phone on the road one night with my wife, and we were chatting, and and she basically was saying, hey, the kids are asking, where's dad?
Yep.
And I am on the road, with that plan being back to back to back. And so it really was a big wake up call for me to realize that, I needed to create a more sustainable work-life balance. And I don't think that's something you just go, I'm gonna do that later. Because I
Mm.
think later is always later, so it's just way too easy to just keep putting off that work-life balance to the future because, well, hey, they're babies. They don't even know what's going on. Also, I'll keep working. Hey, it's okay. They've got mom at home, or whoever's at home, right, helping. So I think it's something that we have to be really mindful of that. Whether you do it now or later, you need to start working towards that balance.
All right, Brad, you're gonna make me quit my job and go buy a business.
That's not the fix. That is not the solution. Do you know many business owners that have a life? I I don't. I don't. Most business owners are working their tail off, and then after they get home, they work more.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. That is very true.
Mm,
But when the business owners get you in their business, you create the systems and the processes so they can remove themselves. And then it's a
it
bit
helps.
better on the work-life balance. So I'll just go buy a business and then I'll poach you from VARC Solutions after y'all's
Yeah,
exit.
right. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Awesome. Well, cool. Brad, tell me about the top 1 to 2 skills that you need to develop right now to make some of these dreams and goals come true.
So, develop, I'd also just kind of reinforce, so when it comes to the things that I do well, and also the things that I need to keep doing well, is focusing. So I'd say focus and being persistent are probably the big two. And so why is that? Um, we are so busy these days. I mean, again, I don't know many people that are not busy, right? They're busy, busy, busy. There's tons of distractions. Whether it's 100 emails a day that you're having to respond to, or the phone calls, or the demands on your time, whatever. That is the hardest thing, in my opinion, to do well, is just to focus on the right things, focus on what you can do. It's too easy to kind of say yes, yes, yes to everybody. But the more you say yes, 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 the more likely is that you're going to do 9 of those 10 things poorly versus that one thing very, very effectively and executing well. And so I think it's actually one of my skills, but it's also a daily challenge. I'm good at what I do, and so I like to do it, right? So when somebody says, "Hey, can you do this thing that's kind of within my wheelhouse?" I want to do it, but I've got to focus on one, saying no, and really focusing on what I can do. What's achievable, um, so that I am effective. And so that's probably the biggest one. It's just so easy to get off track these days and be chasing down rabbit holes, and that doesn't seem to lead positively anywhere. You'll be busy, you'll be busy. Um, in fact, on that point, like one of the things that I see, this is going to be a rabbit hole, maybe a little bit off topic, but I'll give you an example. In my office, there's a lot of women, right? There's a lot of females. In my wife's company, there's a lot of females. And one of the things that I kind of hear pretty consistently is just that feeling of inadequacy, right? I can't do, this stuff very well, or feeling like, beating themselves up a lot. And I think part of the challenge with that is not focusing, on that one thing or those 2 or 3 things that you do well, and just sticking with that, right? When you try to do a lot of different things, especially that you're not gifted at or not skilled at, when you try to the whole focusing on your strengths, not focusing on your weaknesses, when people are trying to do all things for all people, it can only lead to feelings of crap, I'm not good at a lot of this stuff. So
Yeah.
so I think That's probably a big one. And then it's kind of like you asked for, it's like two skills. I think the second one is persistence with anything. And you know this, Timothy, too. You're training for a marathon. You don't just show up on the day of the marathon and do well. People that do that are in pain for weeks and weeks and weeks after that. So it really does take persistent effort. You've got a goal, right? You're working towards something. You just need to keep working at it every day, working at it every day, working at it every day, and you will get stronger and you will get faster and you will have that endurance, right? Um, but I mean, just take that concept and apply it to um, a career, being a mom, being a dad, being a husband, being a wife, what have you. Um, the only way you get better over the long term is just by consistently and persistently, working at
Mm, yeah. I think focus is easy to have it elude you because I think something for me when I've lost focus, it's like you hit a challenge and then you try to think of creative solutions as opposed to persisting through the problem. And so you start to go down those different rabbit holes, or like you were saying, something that is in your purview but is not effective as a means to your goal comes into play, and you see an opportunity to serve somebody, and we're service hearted people, all that good stuff, but it's not your highest and best use. And so
it. Yeah.
those two things are like I really resonate with both of them.
What's interesting is I had a chat with a guy a couple years ago, and it was one of these businesses that we are in relationship with, right? They don't own us, we don't owe them. It's more like a vendor, kind of like a partner that we work with. And I remember reaching out to him one day to say, hey, have you thought about adding this and this and this? Some things that we kind of do or that could help with. And he was very short with me, but in a good way. He's like, Brad, we've spent a lot of time working on our vision, and this is not a fit. And I know that if I even go down this road with you, it's going to take me off track. It's going to distract me from our real mission. And ultimately, I'm going to be miserable at the end. And he's like, so I'm just going to have to politely say no. I mean, it was like, huh,
Yeah,
interesting. How many of us should be saying the same thing when people call us and say, have you thought about, can you do, would you like an opportunity to, fill in the blank? I mean, for me, again, I mean, it was a little hard to hear in the moment, but after some reflection, I'm like, this guy's got it right. I mean, I wish he would have said yes, but
yeah,
he's got the right mindset to be truly effective in the area that he wants to go
yeah.
by saying no. By saying no.
Saying no.
Isn't that crazy?
It really is. Specifically because the ideas seem so good. It's like, oh, this seems like it could be so good. And so you don't create some of that FOMO, but you got to say no, and you got to stay consistent and focused on where you're trying to go if you actually want to get there. So
Yeah,
there it is.
crazy.
Well, if there were one or two people you could meet right now, and this could be a specific person or a type of person, and they'd really help you take that next step towards your dreams and goals, who would they be and how would they help you?
Very cool. I'm not going to list a specific person, but I'm gonna use the second part of yours, which was the type of person, because I've got a couple people in my life that kind of fit this model or fit this, fit that answer, and really my answer to that is really surrounding myself with people who are encouraging.
Mm,
Okay. Um, there's a lot of people out there that are discouraging, right? There's a lot of people out there that want to poke holes in your dream. Okay. Talk about your podcast, right? There's people out there that just want to poke holes in the dream because they don't think it's a fit for them. Okay. Maybe they don't think it's a good idea because they don't have the skills to do it. Um, I've talked with my daughter, one in particular at length about this kind of stuff because she's got a dream, right? She wants to, go into the Airbnb business and she wants to do, do wealth management or whatever. She's got some dreams, And if I kind of speak into that and just go, well, are you sure? Have you thought about that? What if you fail? All I'm doing is seeding doubt and seeding, self doubt, where at some point she's going to go, oh yeah, you're probably right. I can't do it. And I hate that. That drives me insane. Um, so when you've got people in your life that are encouraging, look, you don't have to be like, oh, you can do it, you're amazing, and you're never going to have a problem, pursuing this dream of yours. But you need people around you to say, hey, you can do it, give it a try, it's worth pursuing. What can I do to help? As opposed to, I don't know, it doesn't sound smart to me. I mean, it's like nobody wants to hear that. And I know from a dream perspective, right? You don't want to share your dream with people who are dream killers.
Yep.
I remember I remember there was this thing on promoted a couple years ago called Masterclass. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it was one of those subscription services where they've got these masters in different areas that talk about their craft. And I remember one in particular. It was Sarah Blakely, that's the founder of
Thanks.
Banks, right? Yeah, and I hope I'm getting this reasonably accurately. This is a couple years ago, but I remember she said something about she spent a year working on her design, her plan, her everything before she ever mentioned it to anybody, because she knew that if she started telling all of her friends about it before she had it fully worked out, that what she would hear is stupid idea, not going to work, couldn't work, too expensive, people aren't going to buy it, right? She was going to just be flooded with negativity, and eventually she would just give up. So she's like, no, I'm gonna master plan this out so that I can go and come and say, no, I've got a plan. I've got it figured out. I've already worked out the economic model. I've already worked on the technology, right?
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be great in reverse, if we had people around us that we could share our dreams with, and they would actually encourage us and say, you can, and what can I do to help? I mean, seems like to me, ultimately, that would be better. So,
I'm right there with you.
so I need more people like that in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I think it's funny how long or how far a kind word will go with people, just because we're so used to hearing that negativity and being drowned with that negativity. When somebody is unusually kind, a lot of people will either be suspicious or extremely touched, just because there's such an absence of it. So surrounding yourself with people that are encouraging is a really great move. And you are going to be like the 5 people that you spend your time around. So not only will they bring you down, but then you will start to discourage other people's dreams, because your dreams have been kicked and you've limited yourself. So now you start to limit other people, projecting your own beliefs onto them. And so, yeah, I support it. I support it for
Well,
sure.
and how many of those people are in our own families?
Oh my gosh, don't get me started.
The ones that are the dream killers.
Oh, yep.
It's your mom, right? It's your dad, it's your it's your brother, your sister. It all too oftentimes it's very close to home where those negative words are feeding into you, and those are also the ones that have the biggest impact. So, if word for the wise of anybody out there that's got either a dream or is in a relationship with somebody else that has a dream, is there's enough people in this world that are going to say you can't do it. In your family, be that one that says they can.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Well, now we got our thriving three. And our first question is, what's your favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one of the three.
Okay. Favorite book, podcast, or movie? Um, so I'm gonna go with book, and I would say it's Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Good
I don't
one.
know if you ever heard of that one,
Well, I've heard
but
it's really good. I haven't read it myself, actually.
it's a good book. I mean, I've got a number of like best, best in the world kind of favorite books of mine, but David Goggins is a one. I mean, you could love him or hate him. He's not the cleanest speaking person in the world, but if you can get past that, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but he in summary, I'm not going to summarize his book. You go read it, but in summary, um, he he proves the model that anybody can do anything if you just work your butt off. You know, it doesn't matter how dumb you are, educated you are, how much money you have or don't have. I mean, he truly does prove the model that you can change your life. You can go from anywhere you happen to be to anywhere you ultimately want to be if you just commit to it and work your tail off. I mean, and he's got a great story, man. I mean, he's gone from 300 plus pounds to a Navy SEAL, and now he's just a total badass. In so many different ways. But he had to want it, and then he had to work on it, and work and work and work and work and work. But anybody that's kind of sitting there saying, poor me, I don't have what it takes, um, you know, you've already failed. You gotta flip it around and just do it.
Hmm. Yeah, now the man runs 200-mile races and breaks the pull-up record
Absolutely.
like a boss.
Absolutely. In an afternoon.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
did he do in the morning? He probably did a 2 hour leg workout.
Yep, yep. Well, cool, Brad. What's one way you like to take care of yourself?
For me, taking care of myself comes down to relationships. So, I mean, again, I work really hard. I try to take breaks every once in a while. I try to, relax and veg out in front of the TV, so that I'm quote unquote not always working. But at the end of the day, for me, it's relationships. And so, like, for example, I've got some guys that I get together with, not every Saturday, but I'd like to get together with them frequently on Saturdays and just go have breakfast, have coffee, and be in relationship. And that keeps me sane. It keeps me, fresh. Just having conversations with people who are different than me. um, they've got their own lives, they've got their own job, they've got their own, family stuff, and they're reading, like, to your point, they're reading different books, they're listening to different podcasts, they're watching different movies, right? And just having conversations with folks that I care about, and vice versa. To me, I mean, that's like ultimate self-care, is just being in positive relationships with other people that kind of feed you and allow you to feed them.
Yep, I gotcha. Well, tell us about we're about to jump into limiting beliefs. So what is one limiting belief that continues to pop up in your life, if any?
Yeah, honestly, I'd say probably one of the biggest limiting beliefs is I can do this by myself. So
Ooh.
yeah, I mean, because one, and I don't know if this is definitely not purely a guy thing, but I would say stereotypically, I think it is more of a guy thing. Just that whole ego of I don't need other people to help me. I can do this. I'm good. You don't need help. But I would say consistently in my career and in my relationships and in my marriage and all those other things, when I have said, I don't need anybody else, I can do this on my own, it's led to problems every time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense because we're made to be in relationship. Like we're not made to be in isolation. And so it's so funny. I think this is the funniest thing because it happens across the board. Whenever life is going rough, it's probably because you're trying to do something alone. Like when it comes to finances, when it comes to health, when it comes to your intimate relationships, when it comes to everything. Like when I look at insurance companies as a model, it's like they literally work by pooling people's funds together and then investing it. And that's how they can kind of mitigate the risk of having these huge expenditures, right? They
Yep.
are producing so much income off the pooled funds, they can cover the claims that are made. I'm just like, if people were just willing to bear the burden of financial stress together more often in life, and we had a more trusting, kind of unified community around us,
Yep.
like we could literally invest together and it would change so many people's lives, because you may have an extra 300 a month, but if you get 10 people together and now you guys have an extra 3,000 a month, it's like you can start to do something with that that you can't do with 300 a month, right? And so it just blows my mind how often we're trying to do stuff alone when we're made to be in community.
100%, 100%. I mean, you ever heard that phrase? Well, it's not a phrase, but just the comparison of like independence versus interdependence.
Yep.
I
Seven habits
think
of highly effective people.
there you go. It's like in a marriage, right? If I'm not leaning on my spouse for the things that she's gifted at, and vice versa, one, we're both working harder than we need to. And we're probably going to be frustrated, and we're probably going to be, nipping at each other. Whereas, and so like my wife and I, in the church that we go to here, and I'm actually like in the Dallas area, we basically volunteer on occasion in this marriage study. And one of the things that they talk about in this marriage study is, there's you, and there's her, and then there's the both of you, okay, or the us, right? And you're not, you are distinct, people, right? You are you, and she's herself, and that's a whole person, right? But when you come together and you share each other's gifts, and you help one another, and you rely on one another, that's that whole interdependence piece. The whole world works better, right? The relationship works better. The business works better. Everything works better when you're not dependent. And I think that's the other key, right? You're not dependent on this other person. Like you could go on your own, right? And hopefully survive. Dependence is not a great thing, I think, in relationships, but that interdependent part where I'm choosing to rely on you is probably a better way of saying it.
Mm,
If I choose to rely on, a spouse, if I choose to rely on a friend for help, um, good things happen.
yeah, for sure. All right, we got one last question for you. What is your favorite belief about yourself?
Wow. My favorite belief about myself. Mm, that is a tough one. My favorite belief about myself. Um, I would say my favorite belief is probably it's all going to be fine.
Mm,
It's going to be fine. It's going to be good. It'll work itself out. I think my kids hate it when I say this sometimes, but like, people get all worked up, right? They get all worked up about, well, what about this? And what about this? And have you thought about that? And what if this happens? And what if that happens? And I'm like, look, it'll work itself out. And so
yep.
just that mindset is really what it's about. Uh, it makes my life a lot easier. I can tell you that much, because I mean, people that you talk to that are always stressing and worrying about all these things that never happen, is frustrating, right? It's not fun. It's not fun to be around. And yeah, so I think that would have to be it. Just the the belief, if you will, that everything's going to be fine, even if it's not fine, right? I mean, this is not about denying reality, right? It's not like, hey, cancer doesn't exist. This is not about saying I'm always going to be healthy, right? There are going to be challenges in life. It's not always going to be okay. But if we spend all of our time worrying about all these things that most of which will never ever happen, I think is kind of silly. So I'd say that's probably it.
Yeah, there we go. Well, Brad, that's all we got for you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's like these things are fun, and really, Timothy. I mean, it's great just to have a conversation with you. It's like
Yeah,
who knew? Who knew we'd have this conversation?
for sure. I'm right there with you. Well, where should people reach you, reach VARC Solutions if they want to know more?
I'd say two things. One, so our company, right, is VARC Solutions. So it's varcsolutions.com. But hey, I love to connect. So, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably where I hang out the most. So if you want to, look me up on LinkedIn, it's Brad White, VARC Solutions. You'll probably find me, and I'd love to connect.
There we go. Well, all those links will be down in the show notes. Again, Brad, thank you for coming on the show. Guys, thank you for listening. If you want to know more, check out the show notes. We will see you guys on the next one. And on that note, we're out.